Morning, everybody. My name's David Carney. I'm the Executive Director of the Career Industry Council of Australia. Welcome to our session this morning. Thank you for joining us bright and early on a Monday morning, wherever you're joining us from. Hope you've had a nice weekend, obviously coming on the back of National Careers Week, which was a busy week for a lot of us. So it's great to have you with us this morning for the second of our information sessions on the newly released Guiding Principles for Career Development Services and Career Information Products. The way the session will work today is I'll take you through the first part of the session, and then I'll be introducing you to Dr. Mary McMahon, who is the CICA Vice President and who chaired the working group which undertook the work to revise this particular document. Just before we get underway today, I'd just like to make an acknowledgement of country. So the Career Industry Council of Australia would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all meet today and pay our respects to elders past and present. We'd like to recognise the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to land, waters, culture and community. So for those of you that are perhaps joining us that are unfamiliar with who CICA is, so the Career Industry Council, or CICA, is the national peak body for the career development sector in Australia. And we're responsible for a range of things, but particularly around advancing professional standards, so greater professionalisation of the industry in Australia, very much around promoting ethical and evidence-informed practice. We support quality career development services. We advocate for the value of career development across all life stages. And we also, as I said, we very strongly focus on strengthening the professionalism of the sector, both nationally and internationally. We are an active participant on the international stage as well. We have 10 member associations as part of CICA, and so they're the ones that are listed on your screen now. You may belong to one of those or multiple of those, but they are the member associations that make up the Career Industry Council of Australia. So today we're going to have a look at the Guiding Principles for Career Information Products and Services. But before we get on to that particular document specifically, I would just like to take you through where this document sits in the overall framework of the national career development quality ecosystem that CICA is responsible for. So career development practice in Australia is supported by 4 interconnected frameworks, and they are the Australian Blueprint for Career Development, the professional standards for career practitioners, the Guiding Principles, which we're having a look at today, and the 4th of the frameworks is something that's yet to be published. We published in October this year, and that's the Service Benchmarking Resource. And together, these frameworks create a national quality architecture for individuals, practitioners, service information products, and organisations. So they're very much an interconnected ecosystem. And so whilst each of these 4 documents obviously can be used in isolation, depending upon what you're looking to do, they are actually all interconnected to make up this national quality career development ecosystem. So how do these frameworks work together? How do they coordinate, and where are the synergies? So the frameworks together support a coherent, ethical, evidence-informed and future-focused career development system. So the Australian Blueprint for Career Development looks at what individuals need to learn. The standards focus on what practitioners need to uphold. The Guiding Principles, which we're having a look at today, is about how we evaluate quality and ethics. And the Benchmarking Resource, as I said, which will be published in October this year, looks at how we improve service delivery. So if we take a look at each of these 4 documents just very briefly, just as a recap before we start. So the Australian Blueprint for Career Development very much focuses on what individuals need to learn, and it identifies those career management competencies. It supports career development learning across a lifespan, and it provides a framework for program design and evaluation. So for those of you that are familiar, obviously, with the blueprint, it's broken up into those 3 learning areas of personal management, learning and work exploration, and career building. And the key message of the blueprint is that it focuses on client learning outcomes. And whatever sector you're joining us from today, we will be using the term client, but you can interchange that. So if you're joining us from a school, obviously when we talk about clients, you would translate that into students. The blueprint obviously identifies these competencies that individuals need to possess, and it defines the what. So it identifies what individuals need to understand about themselves, to understand the world of work, to be able to navigate transitions, to make informed decisions, and to build careers across a lifespan. The important principle about this is that career development is lifelong, and it extends beyond occupations and into life learning and work, as well as transitions. The professional standards for Australian career development practitioners, which was also updated, and a new edition of that was released earlier this year as well, focuses on what practitioners need to know and to do and to uphold their professionalisation. And so this includes things like codes of ethics, entry-level qualifications, continuing professional development, core competencies, and specialised competencies. So the professional standards very much defines professional capability, ethics, and accountability. So the professional standards define the who and the how. The professional standards ensure that career practitioners hold appropriate qualifications, that when they practice, when they're working with clients, that they practice ethically, that they maintain professional competence, that they engage in continuing professional development. And obviously the professional standards outline what the minimum hours of continuing professional development are, but the association that you belong to may have a greater number of hours for that, but they can't have less than that. They apply professional judgment, and obviously the latest edition of the professional standards looks at the responsible use of digital and AI-enabled tools, which you'll see when we move through today's framework has also captured that as well. So the standards operationalise professional practice, ethical conduct, and practitioner capability. The guiding principles for career development services and career information products very much operationalises quality assurance at the service and product level. And this document helps practitioners evaluate whether services and products are ethical, whether they're inclusive, whether they've been informed by evidence, that they are accessible, they're fit for purpose, and future focused. And the purpose of the guiding principles is to support you as practitioners to evaluate career development services, career information products, digital platforms, AI-enabled tools, and online resources. So those last three dot points obviously are very important at the moment with what we're working through with the emergence of AI and generative AI. And as practitioners and people working in this sector, we need to make sure that we can evaluate those digital platforms if we are implementing them into products and services. The principles support ethical practice, professional judgment. They make sure that the client is at the centre of the delivery purpose and that we have continuous quality improvement. And then, as I said, in October this year, we'll be releasing the fourth of the frameworks, and that's the Career Development Services Benchmarking Resource. So previously, 11 years ago, CICA released a benchmarking resource specifically designed for schools. And the decision has been taken that the new framework will be an all-sector framework, so it'll be able to be adapted and used in whatever sector you're working in. And the focus of this resource very much will be around continuous improvement of career development services. So this benchmarking resource will help organisations to be able to review your current practice, to identify improvement areas, to measure the service quality that you're delivering, to embed continuous improvement processes, and to align those services with contemporary expectations. The benchmarking resource very much operationalises organisational improvement, and it's designed to be a continuous framework to be used. So it's not something that you would do an assessment this year and then never look at it again. So it's designed that you're continually assessing and benchmarking your services to make sure that they meet the quality expectations of the profession. So as I said, it very much complements the guiding principles. It's used as a continuous improvement approach. It helps organisations reflect and to plan. It helps service measures progress over time. It uses a cycle called plan, do, study and act, and it's structured around the service aims and objectives, that the focus of the clients or your clients, what the actual focus is, the people and resources that are delivering the service, and any partnerships and community participation. So across all of those 4 frameworks, there's very much a shared philosophy that's embedded across all 4. And it reinforces that career development is lifelong, that is holistic, that it occurs across all ages and stages, that it involves life learning and work, that the clients are central to whatever program, service that we are actually delivering, that the client is at the centre, that we maintain ethical practices. It's about inclusion and equity, and professional judgment remains essential. And together, all of these 4 frameworks create a shared language and philosophy for the sector. As I said, this particular framework, which we're having a look at today, and the professional standards, has been revised as a result of an increase in the use of digital technologies and AI. And so we as a profession very much need to make sure that we are using these tools, which CICA as an organisation is very pro, but we need to obviously make sure that we're using them in a professional and ethical way. And so the progression across the frameworks, again, very much is that the blueprint prepares individuals for a changing world of work, that the standards guide ethical practitioner use of technology, that the guiding principles evaluate the quality of digital services and products, and the benchmarking resource very much will look at supporting organisational digital capability and improvement. With all of these things, when we're talking about digital tools, AI and generative AI, one thing that we're very, very strong on as an organisation is that all of these frameworks, one principle remains central, and that is human professional judgment. As a profession and as a sector, we need to make sure that we as career practitioners remain at the centre of whatever service that we're actually delivering, that professional career practitioners remain responsible for interpreting the outputs of any digital tool, that they contextualise that information, that they support informed decision-making, that they are able to identify inaccuracies and bias, and that we maintain ethical practice. So we agree that AI has the ability, and generative AI has the ability to be able to assist us in the work that we do, whether we're working with students or clients, whether we're working to design products and services. We believe that the use of this technology can enable us to be able to do our work in a more efficient way, but it does require us as career practitioners to make sure that we are able to do those things that I've just articulated. If we can't do that, then we do run the risk, obviously, of allowing this technology to overrun us, which we definitely do not want to do. We need to make sure that we realise that AI is responsible and can support our practice, but it can never replace professional expertise. So I'm now going to bring in Dr. Mary McMahon. So Mary is the Vice President of the Career Industry Council of Australia, and she chaired the working group which had a look at the guiding principles for career information products and services. So I'm going to bring Mary into the conversation now. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks, David, and I'll just share my slides. Okay, that didn't work. Thanks, David, for the introduction, and my part of this webinar, as David said, is to actually run through the guiding principles for career development services and career information products with you. Now, we launched these in March this year, and they've been well received, but we're just now providing some support for people who might use them through this 2 webinars. One we did last Friday and one we're doing right now. So as David said, and I'll just reiterate some of the important information that David gave us. Why were they updated? Well, we know that the environment in which we're working has really changed significantly. And the key drivers that David was mentioning was the growth of digital career services, the rapid advances in technology have seen a number of artificial intelligence and generative AI online career tools. So we know that the available resources and the online resources, the technology-driven resources, have just expanded exponentially and will continue to do so. But what we also know is that the labour market is, and the work environments in which people are providing labour, are changing dramatically as well. And those are brought about as a result of the technological revolution. So we're seeing jobs being replaced and new jobs being created, but also as part of the Sustainable Development Agenda, which again is seeing jobs being replaced, new jobs being developed as people strive to live in a more sustainable environment. So all of those advances have brought with them a whole new range of issues around inclusion, accessibility, and a greater need for us to focus on ethical practice and how we deal with the diversity, inclusion, and accessibility issues that have arisen from the changed environment in which we work. So we really need stronger quality assurance mechanisms, and that's why we have this quality framework. And the guiding principles were revised to ensure that they remain contemporary and relevant and take us into the future. So who could use the guiding principles? Well, anyone really in the career development field and any context that career development services are offered in. So that includes, as you can see on the screen, career development practitioners, the managers or coordinators of those services, the people who provide the training for career guidance practitioners, the trainers and educators, people who develop resources, career information resource specialists, and any organisation that's procuring career services or tools can use these to guide them into sound decision making. So they can be used, as I said, in any setting where career development services are offered, and that would include schools and universities and TAFEs, where a lot of people are employed in our field, but employment services, community organisations, government programs for diverse groups, corporate environments that run career development programs for their employees, or private practice can use them as well. So a really broad range of uses and contexts in which they can be used. Why they matter is and this goes to the point we've been making consistently through this webinar, that we're increasingly influenced by AI-generated content, automated career tools, online career platforms. Labour market dashboards are really changing and dramatically. There are many more digital assessment tools available that clients can use with or without us, and there are many, many commercial products coming onto the market that we get information about almost on a daily basis. So the guiding principles are really helping, trying to help practitioners to critically evaluate what's available and the service that they're offering, to ensure that they're accurate, that they're transparent, that bias is removed, that we address issues of accessibility, that client privacy is assured, and this is becoming increasingly important in an environment where there are many more AI tools, and data storage is becoming a big issue in terms of where data is stored, who has access to data, etc. And of course, the ethical use of any tools that we use or any resources that we use. So the guiding principles are divided into two sections, two parts. One set of principles related to career development services that focuses on the quality of service delivery, and one set of principles related to the career information products, which is about the quality of the information and resources that we use. And basically they're designed to help us make informed decisions, but also ethical decisions about our services and resources. Each of the principles, whether they're for the services or whether they're for the products, have a self-assessment matrix and guidance for action planning built into each principle. So each of the guiding principles includes a self-assessment matrix where there are a number of criteria for each principle, and we can ask ourselves, do I fully meet this criteria? Is it really integrated through our practice, through our service? Or do I partially meet, do we partially meet this? Like, we can find this criteria in some parts of our service, but not in others. So therefore we may have further work to do. Or we do not meet it. So it's not yet been addressed. There are big gaps in our service, or perhaps it could be that it's not relevant in our particular service. So really, it's okay to have the guiding principles, but we need to be able to use them to critically evaluate. So this self-assessment matrix helps us critically evaluate. So if we use the matrix, then we can create an action plan to identify the goals in terms of tools that we might want to use. We might want to update our guidelines or our resource lists. We may find, gee, I need some professional learning in this particular area, and so we identify our own professional learning needs. And we might think about the service that we offer in terms of the broader organisation in which we work, and whether we need to think about aligning more closely or distinguishing a little bit from the organisation policies and ethical frameworks. So how do the two marry? So if we have a look at what the guiding principles look like, on the left of your screen now you've got an example of one of the 8 service principles, and there are 8 service principles, and this one on the left is monitor outcomes of service provision. Now, as I said, each of them has a self-assessment tool matrix, and that's at the bottom half of the left of the screen. So each of the guiding principles for career development services is defined and has an explanation about why it's important and what it's intended to do. Then there are a number of criteria for each of the guiding principles for services, and you can see that guiding principle 8 has 4 criteria. Then you can see in the middle of the screen at the bottom, the self-assessment, whether we meet it fully, whether we meet it partially, or whether we do not meet it. And then there's room on the right-hand side at the bottom for us to provide evidence, like why have we said that we fully meet this? Or why have we said we partially meet it, and which bits do we meet and which bits don't we meet, which then might form part of the action plan that we build from here on. So let's have a look at what the 8 principles of career development services are. Well, the first one is about promoting awareness of the service and its goals, which is logical. Do clients know what we do, why we do it? Do they know what we offer, what we don't offer? Do they know what digital tools we use, how they're being used? And do they know what they can expect from our service? So this is really about being transparent, having clear communication with clients, and really informed engagement. So this helps clients who might be thinking about coming to see us to make an informed decision about whether we can offer the sort of service they're looking for. The next principle, principle 2, is about ensuring client entitlements, rights and protections. And this is particularly important in the technological environments in which we're operating, where there's much greater use of digital and AI-enabled environments. And these are about respectful and confidential services. And we always know that confidentiality is somewhat qualified. We have to ensure that clients are independent decision makers, that we're not allowing our values, our beliefs to influence the decisions that they're making their own decisions. They need information about data privacy and data storage, who's using, where is the data being used, who has access to the data, etc. They need to be sure that they're dealing with qualified practitioners who are behaving in an ethical manner. and there has to be some transparent information about fees and conflicts of interest. So, and this principle is, as I said, becoming more and more important as we draw on more digital and AI-enabled resources. Principle 3 is around supporting access to and understanding of career information and ensuring that within our service, the information that we provide, as we know, and this is in the professional standards as well, that information is accurate, that it's current, that it's relevant in the context in which we're working and the context in which the clients are operating, and that it's easy to understand. So this really gets down to those issues about diversity and inclusion and accessibility as well. So practitioners play a really important role in helping clients interpret information, to critically evaluate digital information, to understand labour market information and apply it to themselves in their context. So practitioners really play a key role in not only themselves being discerning users of information, but helping clients to be discerning users of information. The next principle is channels for client feedback, because if we want to, and we ideally should be, seeking to always develop our services, to see our services improving, then we need to seek client feedback. And so we can do that in a range of different ways, like surveys or online feedback systems. And feedback should really inform the improvements and strengthen responsiveness and ensure that we're aware of what clients need so that we can be responsive and adaptive, and it supports continuous improvement of our service. So really, feedback is not about criticising us. It's a positive thing because we're working towards continuous improvement and we're respecting clients' opinions in helping us seek that improvement. Principle 5 is about service provision to accommodate diversity, and I've mentioned this several times, but is our service culturally responsive? How are we accommodating clients with diverse needs? Even though we're using many more digital tools, etc., there are a whole new range of ethical issues and accessibility issues that have arisen as a result of this new environment in which we work and the new digital tools that are available and the AI resources that are available. So we need to think, well, who is this accessible to? Who is it not accessible to? And how do I address that? We need to be mindful for ourselves of the language that we use and whether the language and resources are inclusive in order to avoid stereotyping and exclusion. So this principle is really about reinforcing accessibility. We need to collaborate with facilitators of other facilitators because we don't exist in isolation. So if we work in a school or a university, for example, we may need partnerships with employers, community organisations, mental health professionals, because as we may come up against mental health issues in our work, we need to know where to go to seek support for those clients. We may need to build partnerships with training providers, with family support networks, and all of those networks are really designed to strengthen outcomes for clients. Because if we know where we can go for information, where clients can go for additional support or services, then that's going to strengthen the outcome for them. We need to support practitioners to deliver quality service, and this gets back to the need for practitioners to engage in continuing professional development. And that could be through professional learning, attending a workshop, a conference, this webinar, for example, supervision and mentoring, but really engaging as a reflective practitioner to see what I'm doing, where I'm going well, where I'm not going so well, and what I might need to learn. So this is really about practitioner support. And the last of the principles is really about monitoring outcomes of service provision. And this is about evaluating the tools that we use, looking at their effectiveness, using evidence from those evaluations to improve. It's about transparency, continuous improvement, and accountability, and ensuring that our service is always moving forward. So let's have a look now at the guiding principles for career information products, which is the second section of the guiding principles. And basically these, as I said before, are about accuracy, that they're current, that they're evidence informed, transparent. There's no stereotyping, they're inclusive, and we know the limitations of them. So we need to be able to critically evaluate the products before we recommend them to clients. Now, the career information products are much more streamlined than the principles for services. And so they have a statement that explains what it is, what the guiding principle is. And again, on the left of the screen, you can see the guiding principles, a couple of examples of them there, number 3 and number 4. They have a couple of criteria. Again, they have the self-assessment tool, whether we meet fully, partially, or we don't meet it. And we put the evidence there so we can think about continuous improvement of our service. So these are focusing on the resources themselves rather than the context of service delivery. So these are much more concise and they have fewer criteria per principle. So what are the principles? There are 15 in total and you can see them listed on the screen. I won't go through them all, but basically they're to do with that we are drawing on resources that are reliable, that we understand where they come from, whether they have an evidence base, whether they are theory driven, etc., whether they're clearly defined, whether they're free of stereotyping, and we're aware of the limitations of the products that we use. So basically, as I said, all of this revision of the professional standards has been driven by the advances in AI and generative AI, which has been a major focus of the revision of not only the guiding principles, but also the professional standards. Because while AI tools can enhance access to information, they can personalise it and they can improve efficiency, they can also introduce risks like bias, inaccuracies, privacy concerns, lack of transparency, and an over-reliance. So as David said, the point that we want to make over and over is that we really support the use of these AI tools, but that we need to maintain professional judgment, our own human in the loop, as David said before, to make sure that we're engaging professional judgment about their use. So as I move towards the end of our presentation, just to reiterate, there are 4 frameworks in the career development quality ecosystem. The blueprint, which is about what individuals need to learn. The professional standards, which is about what practitioners need to know and uphold. The guiding principles, which we've just looked at, is how we evaluate quality and ethics in the services and products we use or provide. And the benchmarking resource, which is to come, is about continuous improvement. So where do I find the guiding principles? Well, if you go onto the CICA website, you'll find resources in the top right, on the tabs on the top right, and select resources. You will then click on resources and you'll be able to find frameworks, and then click on frameworks and you can download the guiding principles document. So some key takeaways from this: the 4 frameworks are designed collectively to support ethical and inclusive practice, to really strengthen our professional capability, to really support high quality services and resources, which we know that clients realistically have an expectation to receive and to use, and they're about continuous improvement. They're about responding in ethical ways to the digital transformation and advances in AI, and they reinforce the importance of our professional judgment. And what they're doing is creating a nationally consistent quality framework. So whether I work in the Northern Territory or whether I work in South Australia or whether I work in Queensland, these same guiding documents are providing support for my practice. So some questions you could ask yourselves as a result of this and the presentation on guiding principles is, how are the digital tools currently being used in your setting? What digital tools are we using and how are we using them? How are we evaluating the products that we use? And how confident are we in using AI-enabled and evaluating AI-enabled tools? What are the opportunities and risks? And our awareness of these is quite important, and which principle is most relevant to your current context. So the final reflection as we get to the end of our presentation is that the strength of the Australian quality career ecosystem is not just the frameworks themselves, but it's how they intentionally interconnect and reinforce each other. So these provide a model of best practice for Australia, but I think an important point that we need to make in this webinar is they're not just about best practice Australia, that we also, each of these frameworks reflects best practice internationally. So Australia's not out here on a limb doing their own thing, that we're actually aligned with other developments internationally. And so we reflect best practice internationally. And in many of these, we actually lead the world. We're providing models for other countries. So together, we've got a shared philosophy through these 4 frameworks. We've got a shared language. We've got shared expectations of what quality practice would look like and what we can be working towards if we're practicing, or if we're providing training, what our students can work towards. And it's a foundation for ethical and future-focused career development across Australia. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. So I think we have, so I'll just close my screen, and I think we have time for some questions.
Thank you, Mary. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I've just been keeping an eye on the chat. I think it's probably worth clarifying that CICA as the national peak body doesn't endorse products and services. So as the peak body, we have obviously oversight of the standards, and embedded in the standards is qualifications. So we do endorse training providers who provide professional qualifications because that's important. Some of our member associations themselves have taken it upon themselves to have a range of different programs where they review products and services. So if you've got specific questions around products or services that have been recommended by a CICA member association and how these new guiding principles will dovetail into those, I think it's important that you reach out to those associations to ask them how those products and services are being evaluated. So I think Claire was asking that question. So I hope that clarifies, Claire, that.
And Margie's got a question about how do we build our confidence in evaluating AI tools. And I think this is a really important question, Margie, because they're developing so rapidly that we're concerned about how do we use them, how do we keep up with them, etc. And I think the important thing is to think through, our own professional learning and what we know already, but what we need to strengthen in terms of what we know and what we would like to know. So CICA's been very aware of this as a need for practitioners to strengthen their ability with AI tools this year. And we've run a number of webinars this year and last year on the use of AI and digital tools. And there are a couple of webinars coming up later in the year. David, you might want to explain these a little bit more over a series of sessions David, do you want to explain those?
Yeah, sure. So we do have a webinar coming up in June, which looks at AI and ethical practice. So that's actually a webinar. And we did run a three-part workshop series at the beginning of the year for career practitioners about how to use AI effectively in practice. And as a result of that particular workshop, we have taken on board the feedback and evaluation that we received from those that participated in that. We did cap the numbers because that was an interactive workshop. And we are taking on board that feedback, and we will be running a second series in the second half of this year, another three-part series. It will be different to the first one that we ran. So it'll very much focus on generative AI rather than AI more broadly. And so information about that workshop series will be available through the normal CICA channels on our normal social channels, or if you've signed up to if you get our normal emails about our webinars, you'll know about that. There was a question about how do we access past webinars on the use of AI and ethical practice. So 2 years ago, we did run a free webinar series on AI. And if you go to the CICA YouTube channel, those 4 webinars are still available up there. But obviously that was a couple of years ago, and things have changed rapidly. So if you are interested in AI and ethical practice, as I said, if you visit the events page on the CICA website, you can register for the webinar, which is being run in June on that. I think I saw, Mary, there was a question about, someone was asking, I think Annie, you were asking about the slide. So this presentation today is a repeat of the one which was run last week. So a recording will be available on the CICA YouTube channel later this week of one of these sessions. So you can go back and rewatch it, and you'll be able to sort of stop it and have a look at that particular slide that you were interested in when that goes live. And we will make you aware of that when that recording is up on the channel.
And Kerry's made a comment about the responsibility on practitioners with no expertise in the use of in the area of AI, and I think that that's important, and that's a big learning need in our field right now, and why CICA has focused so much attention and delivered so many webinars on AI and digital AI, and we will continue to do so. And it could be that you can, if you're a member of a professional association, present your needs for PD to that association as well, because, you know, CICA provides a lot of PD, but professional associations also have a responsibility in that regard as well. So you could think about that as well, seeing what your associations can do. I think it's a whole new field, and we just have to try to learn and keep up as best we can.
I think, Mary, just sort of one final comment and question. There's some discussion around the emergence of AI career coaching tools and AI bots that are being sort of rolled out from a range of different organisations. I think the only thing we would say as an organisation there is that you just have to be, as a practitioner, if you are directing clients or in particular students to the use of those tools, that you need to be very careful about understanding what the tool is actually, what data the tool is collecting from what people are inputting into it and how that is being trained. And I think the other thing is, it gets back to what I was saying earlier about the importance of a career practitioner being involved in using these types of tools. We know that AI inherently generates bias and also produces hallucinations. And so if you are to put clients or students in front of these bots and see it as a replacement for career practitioners, I think you are opening up a can of worms for creating opportunities where the outputs from these particular tools may not be as accurate as what you may think. So we do need to be very, very careful about that. It's not to say we wouldn't use them in our own practice, I think, as practitioners to be able to synthesize data, which they're very good at doing, but you have to make sure that you are across and review it. I think one of the recent webinars we ran, just as an example around gender bias in particular, is if you go to any of these bots and ask it to produce an image of a nurse, it will give you a very young white female nurse, uh, very gender stereotypic. And also, if you were to type in, show me an image of a mechanic, it will give you a white male. So we need to be very, very careful about how we're using the technology and in the different formats that we're actually using it. We're just on time now, Mary. So I think I just want to wrap up by saying thanks for people for joining, and thanks for your interest, obviously, in the new document. As I said, a recording of today's session will be available on the CICA YouTube channel. We will make sure that you're aware of when that goes live. So if you want to go back and rewatch it, or if you do want to direct people that you know that might want to go and have a look at it, you can definitely do that as well. Majority of people today were here from Australia, but I do want a big shout out to our friends in Singapore who joined us today as well. I think, and also South Africa and also New Zealand. So it's great to have our international colleagues join us as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a lovely day. And as I said, keep an eye out for those upcoming webinars, that one in particular, if you're interested in AI and ethical practice, which will be out in June this year. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye.